One of the great things about traveling is, especially living in another country for any length of time, is it gives people an opportunity to be really kind and generous to you. I experience so much generosity whenever I travel, but especially the year that I spent in China. So one of the examples of generosity is on literally the very first day that Laura and I showed up at Shiboyuan, the old campus. We were assigned an apartment and we went out onto the balcony. We were on the 5th floor. We went out onto the balcony and we looked down and we saw this group of boys, high school age boys, playing soccer in the field. Now the field was basically just dirt and it was surrounded by a track, and in back of the track there was like the place where they kept the pigs. And so we actually watched these pigs go from little piglets, and they would get fed from the dining commons, all the leftovers from the dining commons, and we watched these pigs grow, and then later on in the year they actually slaughtered the pigs. And when we went to the dining commons, we found out that we were eating the very pigs that had been going around the soccer field. So these pigs just wander through the soccer field every once in a while. Anyways, that very first day, we saw these boys playing soccer, and we got super excited. We actually brought our soccer cleats. So Laura and I both went down the stairs, and it was hot. It was like 90 degrees. And we went out there, and we asked the boys, we said, can we play soccer with you? And they said, sure. So we played with them that day. And nobody was on the campus yet because it was still summertime. So the students and the teachers hadn't come back. We were there early. And the boys, we got a knock the next day. The next morning, we had a knock on the door, and we're like, who knows we're even here? And we opened the door, and two of the boys were standing there, and in their hands, they were holding these uniforms folded up on their arms. And they said, good morning. We were wondering if you would like to join our soccer team. And we were like, yeah, that's amazing. And we were so curious, like, how do they have a soccer team? We didn't know about this because our Chinese wasn't that good. So they unfolded the uniforms, and this is actually the uniform. And you can see it's actually a replica jersey of the Italian national team. And it's just something that they had bought, at one of the sidewalk vendors. And they said, we have a game coming up this Saturday. And we're like, awesome. They said, would you play with us? We're like, yeah, that'd be great. And we got to ask them, like, how do these games get set up? Like, is there a league? So on and so forth. And it turns out that these boys had both graduated from Shiboyuan the year before. They were going to college, and they had been the captains of the soccer team before. And it turns out what happens is they actually organize their own soccer games. So what they do is they call up, some guys from the next town over, and they say, how about a game at 3 p.m. on Saturday at Shiboyuan, and then they set it all up. And then the other team takes the bus over, and they show up and they warm up, and they set up cones for goals, and there's a goalie and everything. There's no referee. I think maybe one of the friends, like a random person, was assigned to be referee. And then they play the game, 45 minutes, 15 minutes at halftime, 45 minutes, stoppage time, and we just had so much fun, even though it was really, really hot. And so it was amazing to us, this sort of can-do spirit that they had, first of all, that they would just organize their own league, essentially, as young people. And then the other thing that was amazing about it is that they just had so much fun, just the joy of playing. And the generosity, right? Like, they didn't even know if we would say yes, and they showed up the next day and bought these jerseys for us, which probably cost a lot to them, although to us it would have been, not expensive at all. This is just one example of many, many generosities. For example, another thing is that one of the old men who lived in the village, or the town that we lived in, his name was Chen and he had been a student in my grandmother's class, because my grandmother was an elementary school teacher in Fengchao when she was in her 20s. And so he had been in her class, and he remembered her. And when we showed up, he came and greeted us and introduced us to his family and stuff. And he invited me to do Tai Chi with him every morning. So I would ride my bicycle over to his house every morning, whether it was cold or hot or rainy or sunny, and I would do Tai Chi with him in the morning, and we became good friends. And every day he would say, goodbye. He would say, manzoa, manzoa, manzoa. And we'd be like, what does manzoa mean? We asked somebody, and it says, manzo, which means go, go, slowly, slowly. So towards the end of the year, he was also an artist, not like a famous artist or anything. He just painted for fun, but he had all these scrolls in his house, and he gave me one of those scrolls to take home. And this is it right here. And you can see up here, all this Chinese writing is like the history of the town of Fengchao. And you can see the people who have owned it, the red stamps here, and the artist. And then here are the bamboo-covered hills in the background. And there's a river that runs through the center of Fengchao. Fengchao actually means windy bridge in Chinese, so that's that old bridge. The bridge is no longer there, so this is set back in time of what that bridge would look like. And you can see in the foreground this town with the classic Chinese architecture. So I treasure this painting. This is probably, of all the material possessions I own, this is probably one of the most valuable possessions that I have. If there was a fire in my house, I'd run to grab all the books that my daughter has made for me for my birthday and you know, holidays. She writes and draws books for me, and I would grab this probably. The third thing I want to tell you about of generosity is my Xiaozhou, which was the youngest uncle, so the youngest granduncle, so basically my grandmother's youngest brother. He greeted us at Hangzhou, which is the nearest really large city, and he wanted us, he lives in Nanjing, he wanted us to go to this place called Shiboyuan, and he kept on saying, you need to go to Shiboyuan. We're like, where is that? He says, it's in Kunming, and Kunming was like a 48-hour train ride across the country of China, and we're like, why do we want to go there? We looked up the dictionary and it said World's Fair, and we looked up like when the World's Fair was. We knew the World's Fair wasn't that year, and so we were super confused. And even until the day that we showed up in Kunming, where another auntie picked us up and put us up in her house, we still didn't know like what the Shiboyuan was until we literally went to it. And we went there, and it turns out what it was called the Chinese Horticultural Fair. And basically China, because at that time not a lot of Chinese people had enough money to travel outside of the country, and it was very difficult to get a visa to travel outside the country, they would travel inside the country. And so they had these huge fair, basically, where they had all these exhibits, and people came from all over the country just to go to this place. And we went to it, and it was super amazing, but we were just amazed by how like all the travel within China was there. And then of course that this auntie, which was basically I think my mom's second cousin, you know, so one of her uncles or aunt's daughters, took care of us. And I actually remember we had taken care of her when she came to America for a little while to do some work. And she was super nice. And one of the cool things about it is that she actually bought for us the tickets on the way back. She got what was called the hard sleeper. And the hard sleeper was when we were really with the people, you know, and so it's 4 bunk beds tall and just people and smoking all the time. It was really, really hard for 48 hours. But we met so many people, and we like played cards with them. We had amazing conversations with them, and they were just so kind. So what you will notice when you go traveling oftentimes, especially if you go into developing countries, that the people are so excited to meet and make friends and talk to you. So thanks for listening. Hope you can travel someday.